So we've just made a baby. Cottagecore plus modern farmhouse, we've got Farmcore. So what is it, and how can you bring it into your own home? We grew up with the phrase, home is where the heart is, but our culture has shifted, and now the message is, home should be Pinterest perfect. I'm calling BS on that message. Home, it's not about the stuff, it's about the story. And whether you know it or not, your home is a reflection of you and is already saying something. So what is it that you want it to say? Hey, I'm Danny, a former first grade teacher turned home decorator. Going from a dual income to a single income so I could stay home with my babies meant budget, like ramen eating, Goodwill shopping budget. And I learned a few things along the way, like how to bring big style to your home without breaking the bank. And I'm sharing it all with you. Tips, tricks, decor, and design advice so you can learn to tell your story with your style, where you can start living free from the Pinterest perfect trap and start living a life of intention. Welcome to Fig and Farm at Home, where we design happy living and where it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Don't you just love it when you hear about a new idea and you think, oh my gosh, this is fantastic, I want to tell everyone. And then you realize 2 days later that actually this new idea that you're so excited about is maybe months old, maybe even years old, maybe passed down from another country that has been using it for decades. Today's conversation, we are talking about a design trend that is relatively new to the design world, but it has its roots so steeply embedded in other design trends that it's really, if you missed the boat on this new trend, it wouldn't be the end of the world. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Farmcore design trend. If you are on TikTok or Instagram, which I am only on Instagram, but if you're on either of those, you probably are seeing this without even realizing it has a name. We're going to dive into what that means for your home and what it means even if you feel like you missed the boat. But friend, as a reminder, here at Fig and Farm at Home, we are on a mission to help mamas just like you learn to create homes that you absolutely love and delight in, that tell your story and reflect your style. And here's the key. The style doesn't really have to be fitting into a box like the one I'm going to share with you today. The style is all yours, and it can be a conglomerate of many different, and I'm air quoting, styles, where you can have a Farmcore vibe, but a modern spin on it. Whatever you want to call it, it happens when you really understand your personal aesthetic. And I want to help you with that. If you have not booked a decorating SOS call, but you're wanting to have a home that you absolutely delight in, my question for you now is, why not? Decorating SOS calls take out the guesswork. They take out this idea of, I'm going to piecemeal all of my decisions together and I'm not still going to be sure about if I'm making a right choice or not. Decorating SOS calls give you a little bit more clarity. They give you a whole heck of a lot more confidence, and they really help you know the next 2 or 3 steps or more that are going to help you reach the goals that you have for your home. So if you have not booked one yet, I encourage you to do that. I invite you to do that. It is my absolute joy to hang out with you on the other side of Zoom to help you reach your design goals. You can book that Decorating SOS call by going to figandfarmathome.com/decorating-SOS. All right, let's dive into what Farmcore is, and if you're so inclined, how to bring it more into your own home. Now, one thing you need to know, what I've noticed is that the word core is being attached to pretty much every design term that is being brought into the universe in the last 5 years. So we have seen things like cottagecore, farmcore, barbiecore, grandmacore, I don't know. We've seen a lot, and what I want you to know is that if we stick the word core on anything, guess what? It's a new design trend. This one, Farmcore, is, if you think about it high level, kind of like a cross between cottagecore and farmhouse. That is where we're going to land. Now, if you're not sure what cottagecore is, that was a trend that was, gosh, it's been around for a really long time, but it really reemerged right around COVID, when we started slowing down a little bit, when we started taking a little bit more time to enjoy life and kind of the simple pleasures of life. And of course, we were forced into it. We don't need to rehash that, right? But because we were at home more, there was a new and re-emerging trend that was enjoy the simpler things in life. And that really was cottagecore. Go back to episode number 15. Gosh, that's a long time ago. Go back there and take a listen, because I explained all about what cottagecore was and broke it down just like I'm going to today with Farmcore. Now, if we think about cottagecore and farmhouse or modern farmhouse having a baby, that is what Farmcore is. Modern farmhouse, if you just picture Joanna Gaines or Shay McGee. Shay McGee is probably a little bit more California casual / modern farmhouse. But if you picture their styles, that is what I'm referring to when I think about modern farmhouse. So we've just made a baby. Cottagecore plus modern farmhouse, we've got Farmcore. So what is it, and how can you bring it into your own home? Veranda magazine mentioned Farmcore as being a design that reminds us of a time where things moved at a slower pace and where we appreciated every moment all the more as we had time to reflect on it. Gosh, okay, side note, wouldn't that be amazing if we had a little bit more time to reflect on all the things that matter? I hope that you're making space for that. They say that there's a warmth and coziness to Farmcore interiors that is often missing in day-to-day modern life. And as I dug into what Farmcore looks like, I would have to agree. It is incredibly cozy, and I'm not even in the rooms. It's cozy to look at. It's cozy. It's a cozy invitation to take your time, to relax, to sit back and enjoy just a little bit more. So 8 common elements that I think define the Farmcore design. You'll see elements of rustic and natural design, things like stone and jute and items that are repurposed. There's a lifestyle part that is involved in this, and that is a deeper connection to gardening or cooking homemade meals or crafting, all of which, gosh, that is me to a T. Farmcore design, they really embrace the cozy and the comfortable aspect with warm colors and thick fabric, handmade items, or kind of leaning into nostalgia with antique furnishings or antique pieces of decor. And with that goes the handmade, or not the handmade, but the handcrafted, the really quality pieces of furniture. And then, of course, we are all about practical design. So having pieces that work for you and are not just there for beauty's sake. So all of those elements kind of define high level what Farmcore design is. And if you are picturing your grandma's farmhouse, you might not be too far from the mark. Except Farmcore design, in the way that it's explained today, is just a tad more chic. And you might be wondering, okay, well, what is the difference between Farmcore and Farmhouse? So Farmcore is really lived in, rustic, but really practical look. It incorporates vintage and reclaimed pieces. And where it gets the chicness is that there's a blend of really well-crafted, hard-working design pieces accompanied by a little bit of delicacy. Now, I'm not talking about doilies here. Doilies would go back into the farmhouse look years and years and years ago. Farmhouse, in what we understand it today as the modern farmhouse, is really clean lines, a really polished look, a very neutral palette. Honestly, if you just picture Shay McGee and Joanna Gaines, this is what the modern farmhouse is looking like. But I want us to go back to the farmhouse of years ago, right? The one that we might have grown up in, visiting aunties or uncles or grandmas or grandpas. And I know my grandparents lived on a farm in rural Eastern Washington, growing alfalfa, growing wheat, and it was very farmhouse. In fact, gosh, I would love to go back today and explore that house in new, fresh eyes, because I think we might all swoon just a little bit. So how do you bring in Farmcore design into your own home? Well, let's dive in. In Farmcore design, we want texture everywhere, and that includes on the walls. So my first thing is that wall texture is a good thing, and shiplap is not out of bounds. Shiplap is still very much a thing here. We just want it to be a little bit more refined. We want it to be a little bit more uniform. We want it to be a little bit more not as rustic as maybe the farmhouse of 50 years ago, but textured walls are okay. We want to avoid the modern textured walls. And what I mean by modern is, you can picture the asymmetrical angled walls, the 2x4s nailed onto walls to have really that asymmetrical look. That we want to avoid completely. In fact, if you are thinking about putting that on your wall currently, I want you to think about that trend being one step out the door. Some other wall treatments that you might want to think about for Farmcore would be beadboard or board and batten, which has been around for years. Number 2, we are going into textures high and low. We want textures on the walls, not just shiplap. So we're going for wallpaper. We are going for curtains. We're going for shutters. We're going for maybe not valances, but the little cafe curtains. We have texture top to bottom, and even, of course, in the middle. I am a big proponent of having all kinds of textures on in different textiles like rugs and throw blankets and throw pillows, and we definitely want that there. But we even want to be mindful of the texture we use in our furnishings. Leather is a big key element in Farmcore design, but also velvet. And those two things right there are the juxtaposition between this hardworking, really well-made, crafted material and then delicacy. Leather and velvet. That's what I'm referring to here. You want to think about having a rich foundation. So moody colors are okay, but we want them to be earth and moody colors, and we don't want them to be too incredibly dark. But Farmcore design is really avoiding the white interior walls. The 4th thing is to embrace antiques in furniture, in furnishings, and we are going to scour thrift stores, flea markets, estate sales, garage sales. We're going to scour it all, antique malls, because we're going to find the quality pieces, but we're also going to be able to find things that kind of hint back toward bucolic life. But of course, you're going to put your stamp on it. So if you're not necessarily loving an idea of having a pasture painting with cows in it, that's okay. But can it be an oil painting, a vintage oil painting of something else? It is still antique, it is still vintage, it is still that quality piece, but it's not necessarily bucolic in nature. Number 5 is that pattern mixing is absolutely okay here, but I want to push you outside of the comfort zone of pattern mixing. Usually a really safe way to pattern mix is taking a geometric and pairing it with something that's a little bit flowy, but here we're kind of breaking the rules a little, and there are ways to embrace Farmcore that allows for a little bit more out-of-the-box thinking. So you might have lots of small floral on the wall, and you might have something that kind of contrasts. I don't want to say clash. We're going to use the word contrast. Kind of contrasts with it in a way, color scheme-wise, and it might have another pattern, and it might still follow the geometric plus flowy, but in the very nature of the contrasting colors, it kind of looks a little clashy, but in a very intentional way. Are those two things possible? They really are. Now, what this doesn't mean is that it is a flea market free for all kind of decorating. It is still very intentional, and you'll still find that there's symmetry here, there's structure here, there's intentionality here. It's just that there's a little bit more freedom to choose what you love. And it's still an elevated look, even though it doesn't necessarily follow that really simplistic idea of I need to have the foundation color be the same between the two patterns. You get some wiggle room here. Now, number 6 is kind of in the same line as there's not really willy-nilly. We want to think about structure. We want to think about pieces that are a little bit more refined, that give it the chic look. So we might have wingback chairs, which are kind of lean a little bit more traditional in nature, but we're going to bring those in. We're going to move away from anything that looks a little bit lower back, anything swivelly, anything that is just a little bit more modern touch. We're going to go back, and we're going to put one step into tradition and choose pieces that might have turned legs. They might have, like I mentioned, wing back. These are pieces that have one step closer to tradition and further away from modern, but they're all modern takes on these. So again, velvet material or leather material is going to give you that refined, that chic look. Of course, number 6, we already mentioned, we really want to have natural materials. So the more nature we can bring in, great. The more wooden pieces we can bring in, things like jute, wool, leather, those are the natural elements we want to be thinking about. Stone is perfect here. And then we want to round it all off with a touch of rustic, number 8. So I'm immediately picturing a beam in maybe your dining room ceiling, and the beam looks like it's hand hewn. It might be a little bit, it's not as linear. It has some character to it in the way that the wood has been marked or worn over time. I can immediately picture and think about the bench in my seating area outside of my living room, where Mr. Fig and Farm purchased some reclaimed wood in order to build this bench, and you can see the saw marks that are inside of it. You can see that the wood itself, it's nicely sanded down so it doesn't give us splinters, but you can see that there's some indents in it that just add a little bit of character. And that is the rustic nature I'm talking about. Rustic, I think, can sometimes mean a little bit antiquated in the patinaed way, or in the it's really, really shabby way. And I don't want us to think about it in those terms. I want to think about refined rustic. Tables at Anthropologie are immediately coming to mind here. Things that look like they have been around for centuries, but they are still in really good condition. They just look a little bit more loved, a little bit more used than what we would find today in the stores. Friend, what do you think about Farmcore? Is this something that you want to bring into your own home? And are you wondering how you can incorporate just a little bit more into your own home? If that is you, come and book a decorating SOS call where we can figure it out together. And you might even discover that you're not really Farmcore, you're cottagecore. Maybe you're even Barbiecore. But together we can figure it out, because the goal is to really understand your personal aesthetic so that you can make confident decisions, saving you time and money in the long run. All right, friend, until next time, I'll see you soon. Hey, real quick before you go, if you learned something new or found value in today's podcast, would you head over to iTunes to Fig and Farm at Home and leave a review and subscribe to the show? That would be awesome. And if you'd like to connect with my community of mamas who are learning to be intentional storytellers within their own homes, join us at bit.ly/design101 group. There's always more room at the table. See you soon.